Good morning, I'm Jennifer Palmer, and I'll be your online worship leader today. During the service, we recommend you have your Zoom screen set to speaker view. This is Common Ground, our celebration of worship for people of many paths who are gathering virtually to share in the responsible search for meaning and truth. Pathways is a warm and open community where all who come with open minds and kind hearts are welcome, regardless of ability, age, race, gender identity, or sexual orientation. If you're visiting with us for the first time today, we welcome you to our virtual service and hope you'll visit us in person when we can be together again. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. To send us a note about your visit or ask for more information about Pathways, email office@pathwaysuu.org. We hope that all who join us today find this a safe and inspiring online place to worship. Our opening song this morning is hymn number 1002, Comfort Me. This healing song is played and sung by Linley Wong of Star King UU Church. Please feel free to sing along while remaining muted or just enjoy listening.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Speak for me, speak for me, speak for me, oh my soul. Speak for me, speak for me, speak for me, oh my soul. Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
Our virtual chalice lighting today is by Catherine Weber. Life seems sometimes like nothing more than a series of losses from beginning to end. That's the given. How you respond to those losses, what you make of what's left, that's the part you have to make up as you go. I invite you now to join in a renewal of our sacred promises. Please read along with me. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other. Our call to worship this morning is by Anne Lamott. You will lose someone you can't live without, and your heart will be badly broken. And the bad news is that you never completely get over the loss of your beloved. But this is also the good news. They live forever in your broken heart that doesn't seal back up, and you come through. It's like having a broken leg that never heals perfectly, that still hurts when the weather gets cold, but you learn to dance with the limp. Our worship song this morning is Voice Still and Small, hymn number 391, with words and music by John Corrado, performed by Brian Kinney on the piano and with vocals by Elena Hemingway and Mike Menefee.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, sing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain. Sing, calming my fears, quenching my tears. Through all the years, sing.
Our speaker this morning is Dr. Sheeza Mohsin. Sheeza is the CEO and Executive Director at the Muslim Community Center for Human Services. She is a public speaker, educator, leadership and executive coach, and a couples and family therapist and counselor. She's a personal growth and relationship expert with a special focus on multicultural clients. She works with couples and families in the US and around the globe. Sheeza completed a bachelor's degree in business from New York University's prestigious Stern School of Business. She has extensive clinical training with a master's in family therapy and holds a master's degree in human resources management from Florida International University. She earned her PhD from Texas Women's University. Now we welcome Dr. Sheeza Mohsin to our virtual pulpit.
Good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. I want to make sure, Jennifer, that you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I am a little overwhelmed because I got very tuned into the worship and the service. It was just beautifully orchestrated. So thank you so much. I want to focus our discussion or my presentation today on the idea of ambiguous loss and resilience. I was told by Jennifer that the congregation has spoken a lot about loss, and given the pandemic and what we have experienced in the past couple of years, it's been really tough on many of us. So before I jump into my topic, I just want to acknowledge, I'll start with all the women in the room who are as diverse as their roles and pursuits. And I want to give a shout out to all the women in the room for historically being caregivers in the world, and what a wonderful job they do in all that they pursue. And someone had told me that, you know, when I think of women, I think of an octopus because they're able to multitask and seem to have these 8, 9 tentacles that show up to do so many different things so flawlessly. And I just want to acknowledge how hard and how tough it's been because the workload has increased. From the single moms who now have one more job of maybe running school at home, to those who are running homes, all the women who are married and have children, and all of the women who are taking care of loved ones in the family, women who are older adults who are trying to help out with grandchildren, with chores, while challenged with their own health issues, maybe. Women who serve in healthcare, there's so many roles. And so to all the women, I just am so happy to be in your company today and to be here with you. The next group, and I'm trying to generalize because there's so many of you and I would love to meet each and every one of you in person, but sometimes it's difficult. I want to focus on men a little bit and just identify and acknowledge how hard it's been. You know, traditionally, a lot of times men are in charge of a lot of responsibility. So for example, while a lot of times we are focusing on, you know, what has not been done, I want to acknowledge all the men in the room who are caregivers, who are fathers, who are professionals, who are income generators for their families. You know, so much has been impacted in our lives, and the pressure, especially men and women who've been laid off, it's been really hard. And then I want to acknowledge the older adults who help out in so many ways, older couples who help each other, men who traditionally in society do not have, while they may have many privileges, a lot of times they don't have the privilege to be vulnerable in our society, to share that they're going through something, or if there's a challenge, to openly just present any kind of weakness or vulnerability. And at a time of losses for the past couple of years, it's been really hard. So I just want to make sure that I acknowledge all the challenges that men have faced, from filing for unemployment to experiencing strain at home. And then I want to acknowledge all the children. I don't know if there are teenagers, young adults who attend service, but it's hard. It's hard to be able to manage school and interest in school, college, university, whatever vocation you're learning about, through the virtual screen. It can be fatiguing. And I just want to point out that it's been really hard, and whatever you have been able to do is enough and good enough. These are times that, while we have also lost people, it's really important to understand what is Pauline Boss's concept of ambiguous loss. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but over the past couple of years, I've talked about it a lot. And that is the loss of the dream of how we thought things were going to be. Whether it was that you were going to be doing something in 2020 or 2021, whether it was the career you wanted, whether it was how life was going to be, when things don't happen the way we have imagined them to be, whether it is a marriage, a relationship, an association with an organization, we experience loss. And I just want to acknowledge that that's not easy. It's really hard. And a lot of times we feel guilty or bad when we complain, because those of us who are strong and those of us who are people that others lean on and who are very aware of all the different adversities in society, we start thinking, well, I'm so much better off than this person, so I shouldn't complain. And so today I just want you to give yourself permission for a little bit to be kind to yourself, and that it's okay to think, man, I've been through quite a bit. This is a lot. And this has not been easy, and I've still pulled through. So this was the stage I wanted to set. I did tell Jennifer that I'm an interactive speaker, so I don't like talking to mute mics. So I wanted to check in with all of you and see if somebody would be brave enough to share when I was talking about all these losses, what was going on for you, and if there were any thoughts or feelings that came up that you would like to share for a minute or so. Anybody?
I'm Mary, and I lost my twin a little over 4 months ago from COVID.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
been tough, but it's people that like pathways. I can't even explain how wonderful everyone has been for helping me. It was not easy to come today, but I'm glad I came. Thank you.
Mary, thank you so much for speaking up despite so much pain that you're experiencing. And I am so sorry for your loss. Losing a sibling is a big, big loss, but losing a twin, it's like a part of your soul goes away. And the relationship between twins have been studied for decades now, and that connection is so deep. And I think it will be very unfair if I say I understand, because I cannot understand what you must be going through. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else? Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any thought of any loss? And when I was talking about things,
I'm going to turn on the video for a minute if you don't mind. I'll go. I'm also, and I had a very severe case of COVID in December last year, a year ago. Right before I was able to get my vaccine. I wanted that vaccine so bad I could taste it. I lost my health. I lost a year. I've had long COVID, and I've been doing nothing but working on getting better since then. I lost a 45-year career in nursing, gone. Haven't worked a day since. Went from full-time to not working for a whole year. Life has changed, but so much is good, actually. It's a relief not to work. It's wonderful to collect Social Security. It's wonderful to now have Medicare and insurance that I didn't have before, even though I was working. I've had a lot of support, a lot of loss. I just feel the grief of the whole world, though, going through this horrible pandemic. So many have died, and the grief is everywhere, and it's all day. It's with us. It's huge in so many ways.
thank you so much, Mary, for sharing that. And I am so glad to know that you're recovering really well. And I am so grateful that you shared this, because can you imagine life just turning upside down? And when you were going through COVID, and I'll talk about this later, how you said, so I had a dear friend who experienced exactly what you did. 3 days after getting the vaccine, she got COVID and she was hospitalized. And so we don't even think how much life can just turn upside down. And 9 and 10 months later, a year later, you are exposed to a life that you would have not at all given yourself to any permission to live. Like taking time off as a healthcare worker, I know so many of them, and guilt just completely strikes them that, oh my gosh, what am I going to, how can I give myself permission to take time off? And now here you are going, wow, I could get used to this. So thank you for sharing both elements of your experience, and that are going to be so intentional for the purpose of our discussion today. I'd love to hear from one or two more people before I begin. Thank you so much, Mary. Anyone? Just anything in terms of loss and what you've gone through.
This is Nova, and I'm so glad to see you again. But I think, as most people, it was really difficult in 2020 getting used to COVID, and I started taking Wellbutrin and turned myself into a pretzel, trying to improve myself mentally, physically, and spiritually. And then we made it through 2020, and then you thought, oh, 2021 is going to be better. And then it had its own issues. And then I was like, oh, good, 2022, this is going to be it. And then look at it. I mean, so anyway, you just feel like, when is this roller coaster going to stop? You're like, I don't even want to think about 2023. And so it's just that trying to seek some encouragement for looking forward to this year can be so difficult.
Nova, thank you so much. And I'm going to plug in here that I am just so thrilled to be here. I have made some friends in my journey of getting exposed to the Pathways congregation, from Stephen Braun to Carol Creech, Paul Kendall. Nova, anytime I meet someone from your congregation, I'm just so enlightened. I learned so much. And so I definitely am a fan of your congregation. Nova, I'm going to jump off from what you said and what I want to really talk about in terms of the meat of our discussion today. And it's this word called resilience. Before I jump into it, I want to check in. Was anybody getting ready to speak, or am I okay to go on? And you can just do thumbs up or nod so I know that I'm on track. Okay, wonderful. So resilience is something, to Nova's point, and I saw Mary talk about it as well. I know the first Mary who's lost the twin. You are in active grief. So you have to be kind to yourself and just let those emotions come out, because this is not a time for you to really focus on resilience right now. You have to really notice your emotions and let yourself grieve. But resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, stress, things like that. Who would have known 2 years ago that we were just going to really notice this word and how it applies in life? Because the speed at which changes have happened in most of our lives has been crazy. And so what I want to talk about, and I want to talk about that more right now, because when I jump into resilience, a lot of times I notice, and I've been on the receiving end, that, you give people like myself the honor and pleasure of speaking. Please know that I'm not speaking from a place of expertise, but a place of relatability. We're all in this together. And one of the things I want you to know is to take it for where you are in your journey. When I make suggestions, I want you to notice your readiness level for my recommendations. And if you don't feel ready, you are not ready, and that's fine. It's totally okay. So I want you to give yourself permission to just notice where you are. And one of the components, before I go into the positivity of resilience, that I want you to check in with yourself with is this term called compassion fatigue and burnout. You know, when we go through a lot of adversity, I don't know how many of you have interacted with medical or healthcare professionals, and you're like, this person is a zombie. They have no feelings. Like, you know, they just told me my loved one died or had a heart attack and they just moved on. And, you know, I don't know why they're in this profession. And I want to apologize on their behalf and invite you to be kind to them, because they experience that tragedy so often in a day that they get what is called compassion fatigue and burnout from like, how many times am I going to see a dead person? Okay, well, here's one more. So so a lot of times people think that they're the only healthcare workers, mental health professionals are definitely vulnerable population. But right now during COVID, all of us are, because it's one thing after the other. One change after the other. You calm down a little and then something else happens. And you calm down a little and something else happens. And then you're like, okay, whatever. Sure, someone died. Okay, all right. Well, at least they're at peace and you move on. Like it's not a big deal anymore. And I want you to know that it's not like you're unkind people. You're going through compassion fatigue. You have nothing to give. You're so spent. And it's really important to notice that. Burnout happens when you start snapping at your loved ones. That's when you've just had it. And that's when you need to really have an inward focus and focus on taking care of yourself. That's your body telling you enough. You have to take care of you before you take care of anyone else. You know, I know that I'm experiencing burnout when I snap at my children. And my children, they're therapist kids. So they start therapizing me. They're like, Mom, this meltdown Monday is not going to happen. So go get help, go get a session or something, because this is not acceptable. And I'm like, sorry, you know, I'm just burnt out, and I start apologizing. But, you know, I'm very aware that, you know, I'm burning out or I'm just fatigued. So before I get into talking about resilience, I want to just put it out there, because as we engage, and Jennifer told me we'll have an opportunity where you can ask questions and we can discuss things. I want to keep it real. Just keep that in mind on where you are in your compassion fatigue, in your burnout, before you start having these expectations. You know, those thoughts sound really good. I need to move on. I need to be strong. And your fatigue is telling you, you know, that's a sofa. It's a really nice corner. Go fold in there and do nothing. So remember to check in with that. It's really important. Is everyone okay with my speed so far? We're doing okay. All right. And feel free to interrupt me. You know, just start talking. I want to hear from you, especially if you're having a response reaction. I love to hear other voices. So, and then I want to just talk a little bit about this idea of resilience. So the speed at which things change, it's really important for us to look at three key things. And then I'm going to go into, what does this whole word resilience mean? One of the things that I know that this congregation is perfect for me to talk about is the idea of what is called an absorbing capacity. Noticing information and resources you have at your disposal to feel better about the situation. So just showing up today, that's just utilizing some resource that you have available. The next is adaptive capacity, and that's where you really have to notice how much you have in you right now with the level of changes that you're dealing with, because you have to prioritize. You're human, you can't really do everything all the time. It's making incremental adjustments, communicating what you're doing. You know, it's like when Mary was talking about her journey of COVID. Well, initially it was like, oh my God, I need the vaccine. And then it was, oh my God, I'm sick now. And then it must have been, oh my God, I need to live. And I'll do all these things. I'll take care of my health. I'll rest. And then being in that space. So incremental adaptive changes. And then, of course, noticing changes enough to have what is called transformation capacity. How do you create a new system that will work given all the changes you have experienced. So how do you transform? Because it becomes very clear very quickly that the rules of the game have changed. What we thought works before doesn't. If you're an extrovert and you love community like I do, I'm an extrovert, and I love connecting with people, that energizes me. It's a part of my resilience model. Well, guess what? I can only see 2 human beings at a time without putting myself at risk of getting infected. You know, New Year's Eve it was a big thing for me since I was like 9 years old. So New Year's Eve, we're going to celebrate. The past 2 years, I've celebrated New Year's Eve with 2 friends because I just didn't want to die. I'm a single mom. I have 2 kids and I want to make sure that I'm there for them. So, creating a system after noticing what has changed is really important. And everybody has a different model. So what works for me may not work for you. So knowing that, being present-minded enough is really important. Now I want to talk about the domains of resilience. There are many different ways resilience has been defined, but I'm going to give a general idea, and then I'm going to throw out certain elements of resilience that you could maybe consider either incorporating, and you may find you're already doing that. So you want to reinforce those. So one of the components of resilience is the whole physical health. And given the pandemic, I wanted to start with that first because it is an important component. What are we hearing about vaccines? Well, and COVID it attacks those who are immunocompromised, those who have health challenges. You know, all of those tiny things makes us more vulnerable. So taking care of our physical health, doing one tiny thing for our physical health is going to be important. So I'm going to give you a tool, and if you want to write it, that's fine. I think you're going to have a recording of this. 20 years ago, when I used to teach 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the things that I loved reinforcing was this thing called 10 daily habits. So 10 tiny little things that I do to make me better, stronger, happier, healthier. And a lot of times managing, so 10 daily habits. So you want to give yourself credit for tiny things you do. Not all of the 10 need to require effort. You cannot come up with a lofty list of 10 things that you do, like work out for 1 hour. That would always be on my list, and guess which one would not be completed. You know, it happened really well in my head, just in terms of execution, it was terrible. So I changed my 10 daily habit workout thing to call Move. And I know it sounds not very good, but I've been able to maintain that goal. All I require of myself on a daily basis is to move for 20 minutes a day, which means that the day I don't feel like working out, I'm cleaning the house, I'm organizing, I put a timer on, and I'm doing stuff. And even if I'm doing it at a speed of a turtle, I give myself the credit. I moved. Good enough. So I want you to think of 10 daily habits, and I want you to divide them into these components and domains of resilience that you will. So 2 for physical health, whatever it is, whether it is to give up one bad eating habit or move for 10 minutes, just tiny little thing that you're going to do. Another domain of resilience is to strengthen your mental health, your flexibility, your ability to really make sure you reprioritize things based on changes that are happening. So making yourself more malleable, doing something different that will be better for you. And that's a very big one. And I'm happy to talk about it in detail in our interaction time. But, you know, very simple thing for many people is read. I'll tell you, I usually pick up a book to read, so it'll help me go to sleep. So that just doesn't work for me. So what I started doing, because that mental stimulation is really good, is I started listening to audiobooks because I don't have time. So I would tell myself, okay, 10 minutes, I'm just going to listen to an audiobook during my drive. I will not listen to NPR. I will not listen to my Spotify music list. I'm just going to listen 10 minutes to some book. And sometimes it's been torturous, let me just tell you, because I'm really not interested in learning. And I'm like, okay, enough. So just something to stimulate your mind. The third one is emotional. Really noticing your feelings, and 2 things to do. Allow yourself to complain for a minute. I know it sounds really lame. So many people are like, well, I'm not a complainer. I'm very grateful. So I want to tell you about this thing called the and model versus the if then model. If I complain for a minute, then I'm not grateful. That doesn't work. You can complain for a minute and be grateful. Both are possible. So it's really important that you give yourself permission to feel, because our feelings actually dictate how we want to change things. So if you keep minimizing your feelings, you're not going to know what is giving you the most pain that you want to then change about your life. So again, maybe I'm being very minuscule, but I want it to be bite-sized, and I really want it to be simple for you to consider. The fourth one can be spiritual or social domain. Connecting with community, connecting with source, whatever it is that you believe in. So many people strengthen themselves. And I loved the song, Comfort Me, Oh My Soul. And that's just so perfect, because some of our regulation comes from within. And source, faith, all of that healing energy is very powerful. So really balancing between external and internal, extrinsic and intrinsic, is going to play a huge role for you to strengthen. Because one of the things I will wrap up this point as I go into ideas about how to build resilience, because now I shared with you the domains, is to differentiate between what is in your circle of influence and in your circle of control. What's in your circle of control is very tiny. So for example, if it were up to me, I'd be, and I'm not saying I'm right, please no, because I want to make sure that I'm very respectful of everyone's beliefs. But if it were up to me, we'd have a national mask mandate, and we'd all just wearing a mask. That's my bias. I'm not saying I'm right. Please no, everybody would be safe and germs would be spread. In my head, it makes sense. I'm sure there are hundreds of reasons that it doesn't for many, but in my head, now, is that in my circle of influence? Unfortunately not. But what is in my circle of control? It's that I wear a mask. I can do that. So differentiating between what I have control over and so resilience also helps from strengthening and understanding the limitation of your responsibility. And really responsibility, your ability to respond to a situation. So I'm just going to put that out here. I'll quickly jump into the elements of resilience that are really important. Research is showing that if you have those and if you make a commitment to grow those, that it's going to be very beneficial for you. And I'll start with my favorite one that I use a lot, and that's having a sense of humor. Laughing, I subscribe to this Facebook page called Joke of the Day. And I get so excited because one of the things I read was about New Year's resolution. And it was, this conversation between 2 people saying, what is a New Year's resolution? And the buddy said, it's something you do for the first week of every year. And because that's what it is. Gym memberships go up. All of these like lofty ideas we have on how we're going to conquer the world and change our lives happens in that first week of the year, and then everything dwindles. So having a sense of humor, is wonderful, where you can make fun of yourself or your situation. I had this whole plan of how I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, starting the beginning of the year, as soon as I would come back from my travel. Well, I had 1 positive COVID test and 1 negative. And then I was like, oh my gosh, nature is laughing at me right now, going, yeah, right, try to go to the gym now. So, it's fine. I'll go next week, but I tested negative, thank goodness. Did the test twice, but having that sense of humor is going to be really helpful. The second is to look at, when you look at a problem, Think of what is a smart solution in the moment. So, I tell my kids all the time, please don't be problem reporters, be solution reporters. Your next statement after, well, this is what happened, should be, what am I going to do about it? Whatever it is. And sometimes, well, I'm going to take a break and figure out what I'm going to do tomorrow. And that's fine too. But notice that there is a next step. It's very important to give yourself a number in how your mood is on a daily basis if you're struggling. That's a really good sense of understanding your openness to resilience. If you are sad, and if you're angry, or if you're feeling big emotions, really what happens is, and many of you may know this, so this is what I call the smart brain. This is your prefrontal cortex. It's where all your executive decision-making happens. You make smart choices based on what you learned. And this is your limbic system, the back of your brain, which is your amygdala, fight, flight, freeze. I'm sure you've heard about these responses. A very interesting thing happens in the body when stress happens or where you get triggered. Guess what? There is no blood supply that goes to this part of the brain. All of the blood supply with the cortisol production goes to the fight, flight, or freeze. So all the great learning you're doing here today, if you're stress triggered, nothing's going to show up. All you're going to remember is the fight, flight, and freeze. And so many people who are intelligent, educated, when I work with couples, it's like, I know I shouldn't be fighting like this. I know I shouldn't have said it, but it just came out because you didn't have access to this part of the brain. You were just working from the limbic system. So it's really important to notice where you are emotionally before you start thinking of resilience and how to strengthen yourself. Another component of resilience, which I feel is the easy one, is notice your strengths. What am I good at? What comes easy to me? Because that's where you're going to work from. For some people, going to the gym was hard for me 4 years ago. That was like my feet would freeze. But I have friends who are like, when I'm stressed, I just go for a run or a walk. Knowing what is easy for you is so important. Whether it is to pick up the phone and call a friend, and which is segueing into another component of resilience is finding your community. And I think this is such a beautiful community already. So your network of friends and family, a lot of things that we have experienced by virtue of the pandemic. One of them is isolation, feeling alone, feeling like nobody's going to understand, not feeling like we have a live community. As we work from our laptops and our screens and are afraid to go out. And, there were months that probably a year, I didn't step into the grocery store. And not that I enjoy going to the grocery store, disclaimer, but it was kind of nice that I could. I didn't realize how much I was taking it for granted when I couldn't go. And Tom Thumb kept pushing products on me that I didn't want from the online virtual buying thing. So understanding what you have in terms of your inner ability to leverage your strengths, finding community, having a good sense of humor, being emotionally aware of where you are so you can be kind to yourself first. We train, and I say this all the time whenever I get a chance, we train other people on how to treat us. So the kindness and compassion will begin with you. When you prioritize yourself, others will as well. So it's really important. And being okay with imperfection. That's going to be my last one. Is being okay with, I thought I'm going to do this, but it kind of didn't happen that way. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Tomorrow's another day. We'll try again. It's really important to make sure that we are okay with things not working out as we planned. Because guess what? Change is the only constant in life. You create a system around something to make it work. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, something changes. Oh, great. Now I have to come up with it. So the more you have the capacity to be malleable and not loyal to the process you've created, the better life is going to be. Because then you're not going to be internalizing saying, oh, wow, I tried this, it didn't work. No, I tried this, it worked for 2 weeks. That was pretty good. Now I just have to make a new process around it. Every semester I come up with a great schedule because, you know, I have 2 jobs. I work at a nonprofit and I have a private practice. I have 2 kids. So I feel like I have this very, very organized chaos in my little jungle. And one component changes. You know, I was just planning travel for my daughter to take her to a theater practice. And I'm so excited thinking, okay, this is going to be easy. My commute will be 25 minutes to Dallas. So I'm timing and time management is one of my strengths. And then she comes back, she goes, why do you have Dallas written in that schedule? And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, well, my practice this semester is in Frisco, Mom. And I'm like, great, that's just wonderful. And she's like, why, is there a problem? I'm like, no, no problem. And of course, what I was saying in my head, I'm glad she didn't hear. But it's really important to remember, and for those of you who have children, grandchildren, young adults, remember when we're in a community, we're modeling for each other. So when you are saying it's not a big deal, you're giving strength to somebody else who's like, oh, well, you know, Carol can do this or Franklin can do this. Well, maybe I should try it as well. So it's really important to keep that in mind. The other component, then I'm going to wrap up. I want to be mindful. Jennifer, do I have a couple more minutes?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The last one is noticing your resistance or openness to change. Everybody's wired a little bit different. You have to know this about yourself. Change is hard for me and be okay with that. Change is very easy for me. I change every day. Some people are so change happy. Oh, I'm somewhere in the middle. I can deal with it, but not all the time. And the older we become as we age, we like predictability. We love structure, routine, just like when we were kids. So be aware. You know, I'm really not a fan of change. It has nothing to do with, you know, I'll get over it. But my first reaction is going to be not fun because I don't like change. And all of these components really compound to us accepting that life is going to continue to change. But you are wired a certain way, so you may or may not, it may not come naturally to you, and that's okay too. So again, in summary, knowing your resistance to change, knowing your own malleability, knowing that your 10 daily habits have a little bit of kindness in all those 4 areas, really important, and how you strengthen your world of resilience in creating community, knowing yourself, treating yourself better, and moving towards your goals in very tiny bits and pieces, tiny habits, tiny changes, just creates better opportunities for self-discovery. The more you know this brain and how it functions, you have more control over your responses and how you interact in the world. Because what happens really isn't in our control, but how we choose to respond to it is. And so creating a moment of choice is so important in that journey. I will just touch for a second. And I was smiling because I was going to talk about it. And I saw the kintsugi component in your presentation. So I use that a lot. I use that a lot when I'm repairing relationships between couples. That when we go through adversity, like as Mary was giving her example of going through COVID, the zest for life and appreciating the tiny things is completely different. When you talk to a cancer survivor, the type of strength and resilience they show is just remarkable. You don't wish that on anyone. Nobody wishes that, you know, anybody got COVID and survived it. But man, you really, really reprioritize and you look at life in such a different way. So noticing that all of our little pieces of brokenness are actually components of strength for us. That's just components of strengths in the making. Can be really heartening because that's what gives us substance. It's not having a very superficial surface level life where nothing or no problem exists. Each time we endure something, yes, we suffer, but boy, we come out stronger because we've had that experience. I wish you nothing but happiness and joy for the rest of the year. And I so thank you for letting me be a part of your service today. So I'll stop here and I'll hand it over to Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohsin. That was really beautiful and helpful. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Our virtual chalice extinguishing is by Louise Hay and David Kessler. Although it's natural to forget your power after you lose a loved one, the truth is that after a breakup, divorce, or death, there remains an ability within you to create a new reality. Our closing song for today is Japanese Bowl by Peter Mayer. This song is about the Japanese art of kintsugi, putting broken pottery back together with gold lacquer. Instead of trying to make the cracks invisible, this 400-year-old technique highlights them.
I'm like one of those Japanese bowls that were made long ago. I have some cracks in me. They have been filled with gold. That's what they used back then when they had a bowl to mend. It did not hide the cracks. It made them shine instead. So now every old scar shows from every time I broke, and anyone's eyes can see I'm not what I used to be. But in a collector's mind, all of these jagged lines make me more beautiful and worth a much higher price. I'm like one of those Japanese bowls. I was made long ago. I have some cracks you can see how they shine of gold.
Our thanks again to Dr. Sheeza Mohsin and to all of you who joined our Zoom service today. Let's take some time to thank Sheeza, ask any questions we have, and visit for a bit after the service. The adult groups will start at 11:30. We hope that each of you on your individual path through the joys and questions of life found some common ground with your fellow travelers today. Every Sunday is new and different at Pathways. We hope you join us for Common Ground weekly. Our benediction is by Parker J. Palmer. When the heart is supple, it can be broken open into a greater capacity to hold our own and the world's pain. It happens every day. When we hold our suffering in a way that opens us to greater compassion, heartbreak becomes a source of healing, deepening our empathy for others who suffer and extending our ability to reach out to them. Before we end today, I just have a quick announcement. Please put a note in the chat on Zoom today if you're interested in participating in the Anti-Racism Committee's small groups that will meet monthly throughout this year. Or you can send an email to office@pathwaysuu.org with the subject line ARC. The deadline to register by email is January 17th. Next Sunday's Common Ground will be presented by the Pathways Anti-Racism Committee, and we'll answer some of the questions you may have. All right, now feel free to unmute and we can thank Dr. Mohsin, ask any questions we have, and visit for a little while. I just want to thank you so much. Do you prefer to be called Dr. Mohsin or Sheeza? And I should have asked you that way sooner than now, but.
I prefer to be called Sheeza. I only like
Okay.
being called Dr. Mohsin at university and in professional environments. I feel
Okay.
it creates distance I don't like. So please call me Sheeza.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sheeza. I feel like you just gave a lot of, I don't know, space and grace for me to go through life with your talk. Sometimes I guess I feel like I have to do all these really big things, and if I don't do these big things, then it's not worth doing. And so I really appreciated your message about, you know, it's okay if it's small, or actually it might be good for your progress to just do the small things, you know, with regularity. That's good. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And, I'll reinforce, Jennifer, that's